Please welcome Lieutenant Dan Choi.
It's hard to imagine just about 2 years ago, I was in Iraq, South Baghdad, an area called the Triangle of Death. In Arabic, we call it al-Muthallath al-Mut. Sounds a little bit more death-like in Arabic sometimes. I was in my Humvee, and it was a hot, sweltering, and dusty afternoon. Normally, we would hear the call to prayer about this time. We were overwatching a mosque. We thought it was a Sunni mosque. And from the minaret, I hear, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajwa. And then my gunner taps me on my shoulder and says, Lieutenant, that sounds a little bit different. Can you translate that? I said, yeah, it does sound a little bit different. Wa ajjal farajwa ala anadu ansar waladu maqtada 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 ya Allah ya Muhammad ya Ali ya Mahdi. That was not the call to prayer. It was a Shia political rally. See, having a degree from West Point in the Arabic language sometimes helped out because I could translate and understand what people were saying. Overall, our mission in Iraq was very simple. You go to war, you find the terrorists, and you kill them. Very simple stuff. Some days we would be called upon to rehabilitate the water system, or the sewers, or the electricity. Very simple. Other days we would bring together tribal leaders and have a reconciliation meeting. We would install a democratic form of government in a war zone where people want to kill each other for the political party that they're in. All very simple stuff. All the more simple when you don't know what language the Iraqi people are speaking. So I felt that my being able to understand and translate did help a little bit in the Muthallath al-Mut. Well, I came back from Iraq, and I was 27 years old, and I was seeing for the first time in about 2 years a lot of my friends and family. I was feeling good, but there was something missing in my heart. I had, for 27 years, never even understood love. I never had a love relationship, never had a girlfriend until I met Martha. And I just couldn't stop talking about Martha. Martha this and Martha that. I would go into work and my sergeant would say, so there's something wrong with you because you are so happy all the time and you cannot be so happy in the Army. But I could not stop talking about her. I had so many questions. I asked some of my soldiers, my subordinates, I said, what does it mean when your girlfriend gives you red roses or white roses? What does it mean when you get chocolates? And on your birthday, when you get this teddy bear, what does that mean? It wasn't just any teddy bear. It was this bright red teddy bear with hearts all over it. I didn't know how I was going to tell my soldiers about this, but I needed to understand what this all meant. I was asking my soldiers, see, for me, love was an altogether different battlefield, and I needed them to translate some of these things that were going on. Well, I continued, and when I came home, I knew that I wanted everybody to know that I finally knew what love was. But they wanted to meet Martha. They said, she sounds so great. My sister said, I want to meet her because you always say that she's so hot, and I need to verify that. Is she really that hot? There was a problem. See, this woman, Martha, didn't exist, actually. There was no woman. I didn't have a girlfriend. I had a boyfriend. His name was not Martha. His name was Matthew. And under the don't ask, don't tell policy in the military, I wasn't allowed to talk about love. Matthew wasn't allowed to exist. But for a decade I was serving under this policy, and it was okay. I had no problem with it. See, I'd never wanted to come out of the closet. My dad is a Southern Baptist minister. And some people wonder, how is this Korean a Southern Baptist minister? But it happens. My mom, she's a baby nurse at the maternity ward in the local hospital. I'll translate that for you. She wants to have a lot of grandchildren. More particularly, she wants to have a lot of Korean grandchildren. So I wasn't going to tell them. I was comfortable. I was hiding. It was all right. Not an issue until I finally understood what love was. See, now I understand what the movies are talking about. Now I understand what the love poems are talking about. Now I understand all the love songs on the radio. I understand what Beyonce was singing about. I would say I understand what Lady Gaga is singing about, but I actually don't really know what she's singing about yet. And I said, well, this is making me a complete person. I understand so much of the world. It's making me a better soldier. I understand what my soldiers are going through. I understand the emotions that are involved. I'm a better person for it. Why should I lie about this? So I told my mom. I told my dad. I joined the gay men's chorus. And it was in a packed house sort of like this. I would be singing, and I would look up from my music, and I said, oh my God, you are all gay. Really? You're all gay? All of you? It was like my community. This was my family. This was, in a lot of ways, my team or my military unit, except in this unit or team, I didn't have to lie, and nobody had to hide who they are. Well, I met a lot of other people that I should have met for a long time. I had met other veterans who were gay, combat veterans who were gay, West Point graduates who were gay, just like me. And when we got together, we talked about all of the things of our love relationships, and we said, why should we lie about this? Especially when we learned from the first day of our training, honesty and all those values. Why should we lie? Well, we continued to tell, and I told on radio, I told on TV. My dad finally couldn't ignore it anymore. He wasn't able to deny it when I started talking to the Korean conservative Christian radio stations. Sooner or later, one of the people in his congregation called him and he said, I don't think your son's really gay. I think he's just part of this gay agenda. It might have been Pat Robertson himself. But we sat down in the room as I was living with them as I came out of the closet to him. My dad told me, this is just a phase. We know you're not gay. But this is a big shame. You have no shame? This is a big sin. Number one sin. The number one sin, he said. Sometimes I have to translate or I have subtitles. But the number one sin. And I had to respond to him. I said, Dad, I sat through all of your sermons. I went to church, grew up in this house, and you told me that the greatest sin is not to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And you said that the greatest command is to love your neighbor as yourself. I became a preacher in a lot of ways. And I remember the other commands that said, honor your father and your mother. Dad, I am trying to honor you. How can you have any honor when all of your love relationship is based off of deception? You talk about saving face and shame, but how can you save any face if you have no integrity? So we continued to tell. And a lot of people pointed out to me that as a soldier, as an officer, you're not supposed to break the rules. You have don't ask, don't tell. You violated the rules when you told your mom. You violated the rules when you told your dad. And you sure as hell violated the rules when you told Rachel Maddow. But I remind them on the very first day at West Point over a decade ago, before we learned how to stand at attention, before we learned how to salute, before we learned how to march in step, before we learned how to execute orders that were given to us, before we got a lot of push-ups for when we failed to execute those orders, and some of us got more push-ups than others, but before we even did a single push-up, we learned the honor code. Very simple. You will not lie, and you will not tolerate those who lie. So why would we follow the don't ask, don't tell code when it makes us break the honor code? But we continued to tell. Eventually, the Army caught up with me and sent me a letter. It said very plainly, very coldly, sufficient basis exists to kick you out because homosexual admission is moral and professional dereliction. I thought to myself, morally derelict for telling the truth. Professionally derelict for refusing to lie. Well, the letter had a couple of options. It told me, one, you can just go away. You could resign. Lawyers told me you'll probably get an honorable discharge. And for me, that's pretty important because my time in service, I am a 50% disabled veteran. And I would like to hold on to some of those medical benefits if I'm kicked out. The other option was to fight it, try to stay in the military. maybe even risk all of the benefits that I've accrued. I learned from the very first days of my training something else. If you're a soldier and there's a fight worth fighting for, you jump in. You stand up for yourself. So we did. I collected over 300,000 letters of support from all around the country and around the world. And if you thought that letter from the Army was bad, you should have heard some of the language these people were using. Don't use up my taxpayer money kicking out this Arabic speaker West Point graduate. He's going to go back to the combat zone. People from my unit, people that I'd served with, wrote, don't assume that we're all homophobic, like we're all uncomfortable with the truth. We went to war. Don't insult us like that. One of the most poignant letters that I got was a message in form of email from an Iraqi doctor. And he said, I was watching you on YouTube. It was a CNN interview. And I heard that you might lose your benefits, but you came to my country and you rehabilitated and you fixed my hospital. If your country that sent you to my country is not going to give you medical care, you can come to South Baghdad any day to the Mathallath al-Mut, and I will give you treatment because, brother, I know that you're gay, but you sacrificed. You are still my brother. You are still my friend, and it would be an honor. I would consider it a duty to pay you back somehow. He also said, I love when you recite this poem at certain rallies. انت حر أمام الشمس نهار وانت حر أمام قمر الليل وكواكبه وانت حر حيث لا شمس ولا قمر ولا كواكب لكن انت عبد لمن تحب لأنك تحب وانت عبد لمن يحبك لأنه يحبك. You are free. You are free before the noonday sun. You are free before the moon, and you're free before the stars. And you are free where there is no moon or sun, where there isn't a single star in the sky. But you are a slave. You are a slave to the one you love because you love him. And you are a slave to the one you love because he loves you back. I know a lot about freedom. I've learned a lot. In fact, on my West Point ring, it says that we're the protectors of the free. I've been to war, and now I understand love. Even with all of its consequences, of all of those things that are worth fighting for, love is certainly worth fighting for. Love is worth it. Thank you.